The silence that followed was heavier than the slap itself. For a split second, even the music seemed to fade into nothing. The violinist stood, frozen mid-note. Champagne glasses hovered in the air. Every powerful name in the city, politicians, CEOs, celebrities, watched waiting. Vanessa's chest rose quickly, her anger still burning. She had expected tears, maybe outrage, maybe a dramatic scene that would make headlines by morning. Instead, she met Amara's steady gaze. Amara slowly lowered her hand from her cheek. A faint red mark showed where Vanessa's fingers had struck her skin, but her posture remained straight, regal. "You're right," Amara said softly. The words confused everyone. Vanessa blinked. "Excuse me." "You're right," Amara repeated, her voice calm but clear enough to carry across the silent ballroom. "I didn't belong here 10 years ago." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Daniel Whitmore watched his wife carefully, pride flickering in his eyes. He still hadn't moved. Amara took one graceful step forward. 10 years ago, I was working 2 jobs," she continued. "I cleaned office buildings at night. I studied during the day. I wore borrowed dresses to interviews because I couldn't afford my own." Vanessa's confident smirk began to falter. "I wasn't born into wealth," Amara said. "I wasn't invited into rooms like this. I built my place here." A few guests exchanged glances. Some nodded subtly. They knew parts of her story, but not like this. Amara turned slightly, addressing the entire room now. "This gala isn't about status. It's about opportunity. It's about funding scholarships for young women who were exactly where I once was." Cameras continued recording, but the energy had shifted. What started as scandal was becoming something else entirely. Vanessa tried to recover. "You think marrying a billionaire makes you powerful?" A faint smile touched Amara's lips. "No," she said gently. "Becoming one did." The ballroom erupted in stunned whispers. Daniel finally stepped forward, standing beside his wife. Not in front of her, not shielding her, but supporting her. "My wife owns 30% of Whitmore Technologies," he said evenly. "She was the architect behind our most successful education initiative. And tonight's charity? It was her idea." The crowd began to applaud, softly at first, then stronger. Vanessa's face drained of color. This wasn't the viral humiliation she had planned. It was turning into her own. Security quietly approached her this time, and Daniel didn't raise his hand to stop them. Amara spoke once more, her voice steady and dignified. "Success isn't about where you start," she said. "It's about what you choose to become. And no one, no matter how loud, gets to decide who belongs." The applause swelled through the ballroom, echoing against crystal and marble. As Vanessa was escorted toward the exit, phones kept recording, but now they were focused on Amara. Not as a victim, not as a billionaire's wife, but as a woman who had earned her place. The orchestra slowly resumed playing. Conversations restarted. The gala continued. But something had shifted in that room. Because in a single calm response, Amara Whitmore had turned a public slap into a powerful statement and reminded everyone that true strength doesn't shout. It stands. Vanessa's words hung in the air, sharp and desperate. "You think marrying a billionaire makes you untouchable?" she had shouted, her voice cracking slightly under the weight of her own emotions. But Amara didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped forward, not to dominate the room, but to steady it. "No," Amara said calmly. "It doesn't make me untouchable. It makes me responsible." The ballroom grew even quieter. Responsible. It wasn't the answer anyone expected. Vanessa let out a bitter laugh. Responsible for what? Hosting galas, wearing designer gowns. Amara's eyes softened, but her posture remained firm. "Responsible for the employees who trust this company with their livelihoods," she replied. "Responsible for the students whose scholarships are funded tonight. Responsible for the communities our technology impacts every day." She paused, letting her words settle. "When you have influence," she continued, "you don't use it to feel superior. You use it to lift others." A few guests nodded. Some of the city's most influential leaders were in that room. People who understood exactly what she meant. They weren't watching a social argument anymore. They were witnessing leadership. Vanessa glanced around and felt it the shift. This wasn't the reaction she had imagined. No one was cheering her on. No one was whispering agreement. Instead, she saw discomfort, even disappointment. Daniel stepped slightly closer to Amara, not to defend her, but to stand with her. His silence spoke volumes. He didn't need to rescue her. She didn't need rescuing. Vanessa's voice lowered, less fiery now. You act like you earned all this. Amara met her gaze directly. I did. The words were simple. No arrogance. Just truth. I earned my education, Amara said. I earned my reputation in courtrooms where no cameras were present. I earned the respect of people who couldn't repay me with anything but trust. She gestured subtly around the ballroom. And I continue to earn my place every single day. A wave of applause broke out from somewhere near the back. Then another. Soon the sound filled the room. Not explosive, but steady and sincere. Vanessa felt her confidence slipping away. For years, she had believed proximity to wealth was the same as worth. That standing beside powerful people made you powerful too. But standing there now, surrounded by executives, philanthropists, and innovators who clearly admired Amara, she understood something she hadn't before. Respect couldn't be demanded. It had to be built. You don't understand, Vanessa muttered, almost to herself. People like me have to fight for attention. Amara's expression softened again. No, she said gently. People like us have to fight for purpose. The distinction landed hard. Vanessa had fought for headlines, for invitations, for validation. Amara had fought for justice, for fairness, for others. And that was the difference. Security remained nearby, but no one moved. There was no chaos now, only clarity. Vanessa looked around one last time. The cameras were still recording, but not for scandal. For something stronger. For a lesson. And in that moment, Vanessa realized something terrifying. Amara wasn't alone. She was respected, and respect was a power far greater than wealth. The weight of Daniel's words settled over the ballroom like a final verdict. And anyone who believes status gives them the right to humiliate others doesn't belong here. The sentence didn't need to be louder. It carried authority not because of volume, but because of truth. Vanessa's throat tightened. Just minutes ago, she had walked into the gala, certain she controlled the narrative. She thought she would expose Amara, embarrass her, reduce her to nothing more than the billionaire's wife. Instead, she had exposed herself. Security now stood at either side of her, not aggressive but firm, waiting. But the most powerful shift wasn't physical. It was social. The crowd had chosen. The elderly woman who spoke about her grandson's surgery moved closer to Amara, gently touching her arm. You never asked for recognition, she said warmly. You just helped. Amara gave her a small smile. He deserved a chance. The young scholarship recipient stepped forward again, his voice steadier now. Mrs. Whitmore personally interviewed applicants, he said. She didn't just sign a check. She wanted to know our stories. Murmurs of admiration rippled across the room. Several board members exchanged knowing looks. They had seen Amara stay late after meetings to review community proposals. They had watched her push for ethical policies, even when profits were on the line. This wasn't charity for publicity. It was conviction. Vanessa felt smaller with every passing second. She had spent years chasing invitations to rooms like this, studying seating charts, aligning herself with trending names, perfecting appearances. But she had never once asked how she could contribute, only how she could be seen. Daniel's gaze softened slightly, not with sympathy, but with disappointment. Influence is a privilege, he said calmly, and privilege without character is dangerous. Vanessa opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The confidence she once wore like armor had cracked beyond repair. Around the ballroom, guests began moving again, but not away from the drama. They moved toward Amara and Daniel. Conversations sparked about new donations. Pledges increased. A prominent investor quietly doubled his contribution. If Vanessa had hoped to ruin the night, she had done the opposite. The gala was no longer just elegant. It was meaningful. Amara finally spoke again, her tone neither triumphant nor cruel. Tonight isn't about punishment, she said. It's about purpose. She turned slightly toward Vanessa. I hope one day you understand that respect isn't taken. It's earned. There was no sarcasm in her voice. Not even. Just calm certainty. That somehow made it harder. Security gently gestured toward the exit. Vanessa hesitated for a fraction of a second, scanning the room one last time. No one stepped forward. No one defended her. The doors opened. The sound of the ballroom, music, conversation, applause, continued behind her as she was escorted out. Inside, Daniel took Amara's hand briefly, squeezing it with quiet pride. "You handled that better than I ever could," he murmured. Amara shook her head slightly. "No," she replied. "We handled it. Together." The orchestra swelled once more, filling the crystal-lit space with renewed energy. But everyone in that room knew they had witnessed something far greater than a confrontation. They had witnessed the difference between status and substance, between noise and impact. And long after the headlines faded, one truth would remain. The strongest power in the room had never been wealth. It had been character. Vanessa's heels scraped against the marble floor as security guided her toward the towering ballroom doors. "Wait!" she cried, her composure finally shattering. "Daniel, please. I didn't mean it. I was just upset." Her voice echoed, no longer sharp and confident, but desperate. The cameras were still raised. Red recording lights blinked like silent witnesses. Across the room and across the city, people were watching. Sponsors, followers, business partners. The carefully polished image she had built through curated posts and calculated appearances was cracking in real time. She twisted slightly, looking back. "Amara, please," she said, her voice trembling now. "I am sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Don't press charges. Don't ruin me." The words felt heavy in the air. Only minutes earlier, Vanessa had stood tall, convinced she held power. She believed humiliation would elevate her, that tearing someone down would make her rise. Now she stood small, vulnerable, afraid. The power dynamic had completely reversed. Security paused as Amara stepped forward. The entire ballroom seemed to lean in. Even the orchestra had gone quiet again, bows hovering above strings. Daniel watched his wife carefully, saying nothing. This was her moment. Amara approached Vanessa, not hurriedly, not dramatically, just steadily. Up close, Vanessa could see that faint red mark still visible on Amara's cheek, a reminder of what she had done. Would Amara retaliate? Would she make an example of her? It would have been easy. A single nod, a single command, legal consequences, public disgrace, headlines for weeks. Instead, Amara spoke softly. "Real power," she said, her voice calm but clear enough for the room to hear, "is knowing you could hurt someone and choosing not to." The silence that followed felt sacred. Vanessa blinked, tears slipping down her face, not loud sobs, but quiet, stunned tears. At first, no one recognized her. And strangely, that felt relieving. She listened to tutors, patiently helping students with homework. She watched volunteers serve snacks. She noticed how the walls were covered with artwork and handwritten thank you notes. For the first time, she wasn't trying to be seen. She was trying to understand. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the wide windows, she was sorting through a box of children's novels when she heard a familiar, calm voice behind her. "You came back." Vanessa froze for a second before turning around. Amara stood there, not in a designer gown, not surrounded by executives, just in a simple blouse and slacks, reviewing program reports. Vanessa swallowed nervously. "I wanted to understand," she admitted quietly. Amara studied her for a moment, not suspicious, not cold, just observant. "Understanding is a good place to start," she said. There was no dramatic embrace, no instant redemption arc, just acknowledgement, an opportunity. Over time, Vanessa continued showing up. She helped organize fundraisers, small ones. She assisted with after-school programs. She learned names. She heard stories. And slowly, something shifted inside her. She began to realize that influence wasn't about proximity to power. It was about contribution. The biggest mistake that night hadn't been the slap alone. It had been the belief that wealth defines worth, that status equals substance, that attention equals importance. Months later, while helping a young girl choose her first chapter book, Vanessa felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Across the room, Amara watched quietly, not with superiority, but with quiet approval. In a world obsessed with dominance and display, Amara had shown something rarer. Strength without cruelty, power without arrogance, mercy without weakness, grace. And grace, once witnessed, has the power to transform more than reputations. It transforms people. The gala resumed that night, but it no longer felt like just another glittering event on the social calendar. Something deeper lingered in the air. Not tension, not gossip, admiration. Conversations shifted from fashion and business deals to impact and leadership. Guests who had once been casual donors approached the stage with renewed purpose. Pledges increased. By the end of the evening, donations had tripled, far surpassing the original goal. Investors who once praised Whitmore Technologies for innovation were now praising something else entirely: its values. The headlines the next morning surprised everyone. They didn't replay the slap in slow motion. They didn't mock the scandal. Instead, they highlighted composure. Billionaire's wife shows true class after public assault. Grace under pressure. Amara Whitmore's powerful response. Leadership isn't loud, it's steady. The narrative had shifted from drama to dignity. Vanessa watched it all unfold from the quiet of her apartment. Her phone, once flooded with invitations and brand offers, was unusually silent. Sponsors issued carefully worded statements about aligning with positive values. Social circles moved on quickly, without her. For the first time in years, there were no flashing cameras. No exclusive parties. No curate de dependencies. Just silence. And in that silence, something uncomfortable surfaced. Reflection. The apology she released was brief and sincere. No excuses. No deflection. Just ownership. Weeks passed. Then months. The world moved on, as it always does. But Vanessa didn't return to the gala circuit. Instead, one quiet Tuesday morning, she walked into a small community center on the edge of the city, a place funded by the Whitmore Foundation. No photographers waited outside. No press release announced her arrival. She signed a volunteer sheet and began shelving donated books in the children's reading room. At first, no one recognized her. And strangely, that felt relieving. She listened to tutors, patiently helping students with homework. She watched volunteers serve snacks. She noticed how the walls were covered with artwork and handwritten thank you notes. For the first time, she wasn't trying to be seen. She was trying to understand. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the wide windows, she was sorting through a box of children's novels when she heard a familiar, calm voice behind her. "You came back." Vanessa froze for a second before turning around. Amara stood there, not in a designer gown, not surrounded by executives, just in a simple blouse and slacks, reviewing program reports. Vanessa swallowed nervously. "I wanted to understand," she admitted quietly. Amara studied her for a moment. Not suspicious, not cold, just observant. "Understanding is a good place to start," she said. There was no dramatic embrace. No instant redemption arc, just acknowledgement, an opportunity. Over time, Vanessa continued showing up. She helped organize fundraisers, small ones. She assisted with after-school programs. She learned names. She heard stories. And slowly, something shifted inside her. She began to realize that influence wasn't about proximity to power. It was about contribution. The biggest mistake that night hadn't been the slap alone. It had been the belief that wealth defines worth, that status equals substance, that attention equals importance. Months later, while helping a young girl choose her first chapter book, Vanessa felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Across the room, Amara watched quietly, not with superiority, but with quiet approval. In a world obsessed with dominance and display, Amara had shown something rarer. Strength without cruelty, power without arrogance, mercy without weakness, grace. And grace, once witnessed, has the power to transform more than reputations. It transforms people, and that is something no one can ever take away.